Hello, I'm Lahiru Fernando. I'm a UiPath MVP, RPA solution architect, and a certified RPA developer. Today, as part of my community contribution, I have decided to do a simple demo on how to create a UiPath chatbot using UiPath Studio, UiPath Orchestrator, and Google Dialog Flow. So, as part of building the simple chatbot, these are some of the steps that we are going to cover. We'll be building the chatbot through Google Dialog Flow, and we'll be configuring it uh, using the Dialog Flow interface. Then we'll be connecting that with the processors available in UiPath Orchestrator, and we'll be launching the chatbot as part of the last step. So let's get to the demo. This is the Google Dialog Flow interface. What you need to do is you need to create a simple account and log in to the Google Dialog Flow. You will need to create an account with the Google Cloud Platform, which is free. The Dialog Flow can be used free of charge. So let's get to the console. Yes, so let's build a chatbot agent first. So let's get to the. What you can do is through this option here, you can create a new agent. So let's just give it a name. And you can also select the language and time zone. For the demo purpose, we'll be using the default settings and create. So once you click create, it will build all the required necessary files in the cloud to work with the chatbot. Yes, so now you can see that it has created a test agent and it has default intents as shown here. So there are a few main areas in a chatbot in Dialog Flow: the intent, entities, integration, and training. And also we can look into small talk options. So intent refers to the intent of the user. Basically, it refers to what it does. So this default intent you can see here. If we open that, the intent is to welcome the user. So once you welcome user, the chatbot will look into these kind of phrases in the chat so that it identifies based on the text here that we need to welcome the user. So because the welcome screen is already available, we will create our own intents. So what we are trying to do is we'll get the user's name and a particular date and pass that information into a UiPath workflow, which is published in UiPath Orchestrator, and get an output from there. So after the intent of welcoming the user, we will create another intent to get the username. So to do that, we need to navigate from the welcome screen to getting the username. So the navigation between intents or link communicating between intents are done through context. Context refer to what the user is talking about. In sometimes user might type in a message which is quite generic. In such cases, these contexts help the chatbot to navigate through the intents to identify the best intent. So let's create a simple context for the welcome intent. Since we are going out of the welcome intent, we'll be mentioning the out context. So basically we'll have two contexts, input and output. So I'll explain the input later. Since we are going out of welcome intent to getting the user intent, we'll just give it a name. Get user name. So these names can be anything, but we need to make sure that we are using the same name in the other intent as well. So here we are saying get username. So we'll save this and we'll create another intent. The intent name is capture username. So in the previous intent, we created get username context as the output. So in this intent, the input of the context is get username. So you can see the context name that we provided. Put that, and it by default sets the output context as the same thing. So we'll just remove it for now. So since we have configured the context, let's get to the training phrases. So in the intent, it identifies the intent based on the training phrases. So we can have multiple training phrases here, so based on what the user will provide, and it will train the chatbot agent automatically based on the training phrases we provide here. So let's just give some samples. My name is John. And enter. So as you see, it automatically captures some of the features. When you say my name is John, it assigns that to an entity called system given name. So these are predefined entities which are available in this entity section. Those are actually system defined ones. So if there are things that are not available, we can create our own entities as well. So since we are looking into a simple one, let's just focus on that. So sometimes user might give just the name. Let's put that as well. So as you see, it didn't match. So we can add that later. Let's set with that. What happens next is the actions and parameters. So just like in every workflow in UiPath Studio, we need to hold these values that we capture here into a variable. So as you see, it matches to the entity name, and we can yes. So once you highlight it, also gives you a list of names that we can match it to. So let's just match it to this. Right. So under actions and parameters, we'll create a variable or a parameter to hold these values. So let's just create one. So as you see, it has already created it based on the keywords that we have matched here. But in some cases, if it's a predefined or a custom defined one, it might not get created here. In such cases, you can simply create it. You can just give a parameter name, entity. Entity is something similar to this, and if you have a default value, that value should come here. So When we are communicating with the UiPath processors, we need to make sure the actions and parameters have the same name between the UiPath workflow arguments and the parameters you specify here. In some cases, we need to send the data into the UiPath workflow. So that communication or the data passing between the dialog flow and UiPath workflow happens through the parameters. So if you take a look at my simple workflow, what happens here is we have a very simple workflow where it accepts username and date and returns output value. So to send in the username, it needs to use these names, username and use date, so that it will hold that value and pass it into the workflow. So let's create it. So here the parameter name is different. So let's mark it as username. Right. Now we have completed that part. In some cases, if the user didn't provide this kind of input, and as I said earlier, if it's a generic value, and you can also ask as a secondary level to specifically insert the username. So what you can do is in here, let's just create the required tag, and here under prompts you can specifically say to enter the username. And close. Right. So we have completed that. Next is the responses. So at the end of each intent, we can configure it to send out a response for the user regarding the next steps. So in our case, the next step is to get the date. So we'll just say enter name is, so we'll show the value entered as well. You can refer to the parameters using the dollar sign, and we say username. Enter the right. So we have completed the first intent. Now we need to go to another intent to capture the date. So what we are going to do here is to create another context, because now we are going out of this intent to another intent. We'll use the another context name get set, just like earlier as we did in the welcome intent, get user date. Now we are ready with that. So let's save it and continue with the next one. Okay, so before we continue, we'll just add a few more training phrases here as well to make sure the accuracy. So um, because otherwise it will look for only one name. So if we have multiple names, that it can train automatically to support those as well. Yeah. Okay. So let's save it again. And now let's get to the other intent to get the user date. Context, the input is get user date, which we specified as the output context of the previous intent. So let's remove this one for now. And the training phrases would be again get. See how it captures this. Okay, captures. So I think it has captured this one. So I don't need to capture that to a name. So we will just remove it. So we have defined the training phrases here for the date, and we have the parameter already created. So let's just change the name. Use date. Let's use date. Okay. So we have completed that. Next one is the responses. So we'll add a response here. So now here we are going to show the captured username again along with the date. So how we are going to get the username? Because it's in a different intent. So we are going to use the intent name used for the username, which is get username. And sorry, the context name get username, and it will be used here to access the parameter of that intent. So let's use it. We are going to add it along with the hash sign, get user name, and the parameter name. Username date is for the parameters inside the same intent. We can access those using the dollar sign get the date. Now there's something new here. Let's get back to the workflow. So here the process returns the process output as our output string. So if we are to show this output in the chat box, we need to mention this argument name in the response. So let's add it. This the output we are not going to assign to any parameter. We'll be specifying it here in the response itself. And that will be mentioned within this. Name is process output. So as I said earlier, the parameter names should be same when communicating with the UiPath workflows and the dialog flow, because using the names it identifies and maps the two platforms. So once you have specified this, we are good to go. So let's just save it for now. Yeah, since we have completed all that, let's just give it a try to see how it works. So on the right hand side panel here, you can test the chat with the what we just created. So let's say hi. So as you see, it looks for the context, the get username and user date, just like we specified. So let's give it a name and see. Right. So see, now we have captured the username in the user intent, username intent. So now it asks for the date. Right. So just like earlier, it's showing the name from the response here, the get username, and it is showing the date as well. So this one is not mapped yet. So once that is mapped and launched, it will show the output here. So for the time being, we are okay. So now we have configured the intents. So let's just quickly take a look at the entities. So here you can see that we can have custom entities and system defined entities. So as of now, these are the system defined entities that we are already using. So you can search any entities and add it here. So for the time being, we'll just leave it as it is, and we'll do a separate tutorial on how to create entities. Right. So let's take a look at the integration side of it. So any dialog flow chatbot can be integrated with these platforms. However, because we are using the UiPath integration as well, it supports a web interface and it uses the Slack. So for the time being, that those are the only two options that are available. So let's take a look at the small talk option. So this is to improve the robot's user friendliness or the communication ability to communicate with simple chats like what you see here. So what you can do is you can just enable it and it will automatically save and train the bot. As you see here, the agent training completed. So now if you say, see, it gives some good inputs. Okay, now let's save it. And now we have completed our development in the dialog flow. The next task is to publish the workflow into UiPath Orchestrator and then integrate that workflow with the dialog flow chatbot we just created. So now we'll publish this simple workflow into the UiPath Orchestrator. What we can do is we can click on publish and set the package name and publish. So the package has successfully published. So we'll create a process using that. So we can go to processors page and select the package we just created. So it's simple process for chatbot. select that, and we are all good here. So these are the two parameters we just passed, and you can see the output parameter as well. And we can then select the environment and we can create. So the process is created. Now, what we need to do is to integrate this process with the chat agent we created in Dialog Flow. Right. So now we'll take a look at how we can integrate these two platforms, the UiPath Orchestrator and the Dialog Flow. So how we are going to do that is through the chatbot.uipath.com platform. So here we need to create a connection to connect Dialog Flow and UiPath Orchestrator. So let's create a simple connection. We'll just give the connection a name. So once the connection is created, you can see that we need to configure the Dialog Flow agent and the UiPath Orchestrator service. So let's start with the Dialog Flow. You can click connect. So it asks for certain information, the project ID, service account, and the private key. So these information you can get from the Dialog Flow page. So it also gives you a description on how to proceed on. So we'll go to Dialog Flow. So once you click on this settings button, it redirects you to this page. So we can get the project ID from here and the service account. Now the private key. To get this private key, we need to have a Google Cloud Platform account. You can create a free account there. So I have already created that. So we can just click on this URL and navigate to the cloud platform. So this is the service account that we have for the test agent. So first we need to go to the I am page and look for the Dialog Flow test agent and click on edit. Now we need to change the role, Dialog Flow API admin, and click save. Once that is updated, we get back to the service accounts page and go to actions and create key. So it will download a JSON file. So we'll open that. So in this file you can see the private key. So we will copy that and get back to the Chatbots page and paste it and click on connect. Yes, so when you are getting this page, that means the connection is successful. So let's close it and you can see that it's created. So similarly we need to do that for the orchestrator service. So click on connect. Now we need the user key, the logical account name, tenant logical name, client ID, and the phone. So this information you can get from the cloud platform. If you go to the services under API access, you can get the API information. Okay, so I also have configured the Dialog Flow agent and the orchestrator service and it's connected. now we need to do is to uh, map the orchestrator process with the chatbot's intents. So let's get to the mapping page. So here we can see all the intents that we have created and the default intents that were there. So we need to, since our process has two inputs, the username and the date, we need to use the last intent we created, the capture user date, and map the process into that intent. So let's get to the process and look for the process we created, simple process of chatbot. Right. So here you can see that in the UiPath side, we look for two inputs and one output, but the input only one is mapped. The reason is in the intent you only have the user date. So we need to have another action or a parameter to hold the username that is returned from the previous intent. So we'll quickly create that. So let's get to the entities, because the username parameter is in the capture username intent. It's not available here. We need to refer that. So what we can do is, here in the response we are getting the output of the username using this. So we'll quickly create a parameter username and we'll paste it here. This will look for that name, the given name. So what I did is I'm assigning the value that I get using this command to the parameter so that we can pass it to the process. So we'll save it. Now let's get to the chatbots page and cancel and quickly refresh this page. And now click on process. Look for the process. Yes. Now you can see that these two parameters are properly matching. So let's click on map and it's mapped successfully. The next item is launching the site or the chat. So let's click on launch. So here we have only two options, like I said earlier, the Slack and the web. So Slack needs different configuration. So for the demo purpose, we'll use the web. So what we can do is we just need to click on connect, and we just need to give a nice name. So I will use the same name, it's already there. Demo. And click on this copy HTML embed code and click on save. So it's ready and you can click on test. Right, so the chatbot page is loaded. You can click on this icon here. So let's test it. Now, and it goes for the date. Yeah, so now it says working on it. So that means it's connecting with the UiPath Orchestrator process that we created and published. So we should shortly see a message box that's coming from the process that I have included. Yes, so we can see the message box. And let's click OK. And now we should see the output of that output argument that I have specified in the response, which will be shortly displayed. Yeah, so now we can see the response. It shows the name and the date I entered, and this is the response that we are getting from the process. So that's how easy to create a simple chatbot in UiPath with Dialog Flow. So to summarize, let's mm, today we discussed about how to create a chatbot agent in Google Dialog Flow. We created the agent and created intents and context and joined that with the UiPath orchestrator process. And we then introduced the chatbot.uipath.com platform to connect Dialogflow and the orchestrator service. And then we tested and launched the chatbot to a web link. So that's the summary of today's session. So you can reach out to me if you have any questions regarding this in any of these contact details. And thank you and see you guys in another video.